Whilst we're waiting for the talk to start, I'm just going to show you a few of the works that are on display here in the gallery.
Project.
Hi.
Yeah.
See how we get on.
We're small. Yeah. Do you need a microphone? Can you go to the mic?
Please can you use it for the benefit of people online?
Okay. Well, welcome everyone to lovely Glassblowing and Glass Heaven. It's a joint show with myself and Peter. August is usually Peter's annual show. He very kindly invited me to join him this time, so I'm very honoured to do that.
Thank goodness, because his work's selling and mine is.
Not sure. But yeah, Peter chose the title Glass Heaven, which I'd like him to sort of talk a bit more about as a starting point, but it's something that essentially, it's the idea of working with light and glass, and as a transparent material, light becomes a medium that you end up sculpting with, and it's something that's very important in my work, particularly with sort of cut and polished elements. I often refer to glass as a vessel that holds light, and I think that interaction is really important. But also then with Peter's new work, it's about the inspiration of light itself. So, do you like to discuss that a bit more?
Right, yes, okay. Maybe it would be a good idea to just say how we arrived at that title. Well, there are two things. One is that I look at the sky a great deal, and you know, I may try as best I can to translate ephemeral effects like clouds into glass. It seems like a slightly silly thing to do, you know, something as ethereal as a cloud, you know, why would you try and make a glass version of it? But I'm not the only one who's tried to do that, and I'm really pleased with the most recent ones. In fact, the most recent piece that I made. I suppose the waves, although they're not heavenly in the sense of looking skyward, they're ephemeral in the same way. You know, they're there one second and they're gone the next. And trying to capture that, or capture the essence of that, is what this is about in many ways. And another thing that's inspired me in recent times has been the Northern Lights, which we've seen quite a lot of this year, or more than we normally do anyway in this part of the world. So and that's something I've thought about for a long time, and wanted again to try to capture some degree or some essence of that in the work. And what I've had here along this console is, and dotted around too, is an evolution of that idea, a development of that idea. So I started at one point and worked through till I got to a point, well, till I ran out of time, in fact. Hopefully I'll continue with this theme once we've served. But anyway, so those are the kind of things I've had in my mind for quite a long time.
So
yeah.
the auroras are this work here behind you,
Yes.
as you mentioned. And the development of this work was you worked with a relatively new member of the team, time-wise, compared to the other members, in Liam Reeves. Do you feel that sort of influenced then the sort of the sculptural making of those, sort of that sort of cyclical nature of working with new people? Or the redevelopment?
Look, what I would like to talk about, possibly great length, not a great length, don't worry, is the idea of collaborating with people. That's really a basic element of glassmaking. When the studio and glass movement first appeared in the early 60s, the ethic or the philosophy was to try and make things on your own. I mean, glassmaking throughout history has been a team affair, pretty much, since pre-Roman times anyway. There used to be itinerant glassmakers who wandered around looking for wood and the right chemicals to make glass, a couple of thousand years ago. But since then, it's tended to be a team activity, and it's gone on behind closed doors. So in the early 60s, a potter called Harvey Littleton, an American potter, decided that he would like to try making glass on his own in the way that he made pots. You get into the studio, you throw a pot, and why couldn't you do that with glass? And actually, that actually happened for a number of years. But then, as people got more sophisticated in their work, they began to realize there were lots of things you couldn't do on your own. You needed help. And that's why it always tended to be a team activity. So, yes, of course, to answer your question, I love working with, I suppose I enjoy working with new members of staff in the sense that they bring, particularly in our setup, they bring certain skills and talents to bear that anyway, listen, I'm 87 now and I can't handle glass in the way that my colleagues do, and that makes it why it's even more important to collaborate, really, from my point of view. And in a way, this show is a form of collaboration too, but it's a different kind of collaboration. We haven't actually worked on the same pieces together yet, but I'm hoping that maybe some point in the future. Certainly, Tim influences my work, and I think to some extent, the reverse is true. But, and I've forgotten, I've lost the thread of what I was actually about to say before you asked me that question. I was about to say something with, yes, where did the theme actually come from? So, a mutual friend of ours died earlier this year, a very famous Czech glassmaker whose name was Peter Nemney. Tim, I don't think had actually worked with him, but I had during the 80s in the Czech Republic. There were some triennial symposia at a place called Novi Bor, which is where he lived. And he was the master glass artist, or master glassmaker there. He tended to work, the work was done in factories rather than, in those days, behind the Iron Curtain, the work was done, people didn't have private studios. But Peter Nemney actually did open one. But he helped me with one of the major pieces that I've ever made, which is a 2-meter high pyramid, hot cast, poured into a mold with diminishing end stops, so that I could build this pyramid, log cabin style. And sadly, he died earlier this year. And I wrote to his son and expressed my sympathies, and I would love to have been at the funeral, but that wasn't going to happen, sadly. But he wrote back a very nice thing, saying, well, he's smiling down to us. He's smiling down at us from glass heaven. And that just struck me as such a nice thing to say. And I just thought it really applies to what we're trying to do. And that was, I don't think I've ever said that. Have I told you why I came up?
Yeah, we did talk about
Oh,
that.
we did. I'm glad.
No, that's a really nice sentiment. And I guess in a similar sort of way with us, and Peter's my father-in-law, Peter Nemney's son, Andre Nemney, is now leading forth their studio and the continuation there. And it's, I guess there's an element within glass of traditions that sort of pass through, and ensuring that it doesn't just stop someone as special as Peter. Things could be lost or left, but thankfully there is a strong legacy there to continue the amazing efforts that he helped to kick-start, which, in that situation of behind the Iron Curtain at that time, I don't know what the sort of rules and regulations of what you're allowed to do was like, but it must have been, for you to go there in the 80s, I remember you told me you had a chaperone or something.
We did. We were given it so-called interpreters, but later we were told we were spies. They were listening to every single word we uttered. They wanted to know what we were up to all the time. And they followed us around wherever we went. But those were actually incredible times. They've been likened to the Olympics. We just had those, where people came from all over the world to work, to do their glass work. Well, we knew quite well what a lot of people did, and clearly there are limitations to what we can do here. I've just been working in another studio, making some very big things throughout that hot weather on Monday and Tuesday. But there, in that factory with a team of workers, to turn out quite unusually. I mean, people hadn't ever seen that kind of work from me in the past. I'm only just now, 40 years later, getting back to trying to develop some of the ideas that and I'll talk a little bit about this later perhaps, if we talk about the future. But the way that I created that pyramid is only really just coming back to into my consciousness. But I, produced that in a few days, that pyramid, and Peter Nemney made me the central column. And that was about 2.5 meters high, and that's, for a piece of glass, that's pretty big. That's, for a piece of blown glass, that's pretty big. Anyway, Tim, let's move on a bit, shall we? I'm sorry, I'm rambling.
No, that's really interesting. And it shows, the length of career that you've had, spanning it.
As I get closer to heaven, that's what he's about to say.
No,
You sure it's not a lot of places?
Oh, could be. Yes, could be. The other place.
That's for all the good people.
You didn't want to say that. Thank you. Yes. Dante's Inferno. Oh, Dante. Dante was his dad.
Yeah. And
Another terrible loss this year. We haven't really introduced Anthony. We should. He's our hero.
Anthony Scala's filming tonight for a live stream. Been involved with the studio for maybe 30 years, actually?
25 years.
25 years.
I was 8 when I first joined here, so nearly 40. When I first visited Peter, 8 years old, so 38 years ago.
So his big news is that he's...
Are we allowed to say your big news?
Yes, of course we are.
Well, we're very proud that Anthony will be joining the Royal College of Art in September.
Well, he's already taught there, but now he's going to do an MA, and he's just received a magnificent award to make sure that he doesn't turn up.
Yes.
No, we're very excited to see what comes of that.
We're very proud of him, yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.
I would like to say, if anyone would like to know about any specific works in more detail, please do just say, or any other questions, just feel free to shout out. Yeah, yourself?
So, first of all, thank you for the exhibition. Peter, thank you for all that you've done, because this is an amazing place, and thank you for this exhibition. My question is for both of you. I'd just like to hear you talk about what I love about art and what I love about what you do is there's an otherliness that comes across, there's a timelessness, there's just a sense of something otherly in these pieces. And so when you conceive them, when you're making them, when you finish them, I would just love to hear more about what you see in what you're trying to do and what comes across. Because do you see the finished article, or do you make something and you go, that's it? Because there's just something magical about what you do. I'd love to hear you talk about what that is.
That's a great question.
Yeah, thank you. It's a very good question. For me, a lot of it is your response, is the viewer's response. Seeing people interact with what you make is really special, and especially if you can see a sort of look of joy or excitement in something, and that level of investigation into what are you seeing.
I thought he was going to say that level of investment. It's really good. Absolutely, they're going to skyrocket in value. Sorry.
No, yeah, that for me, yeah, it's very pleasing. And Peter must find this, the length of time he's worked with glass. You sometimes see a piece that maybe you've not seen in a long time, maybe years, and you sort of can be really taken back to that moment of making it, but also can be really quite struck with the specialness of it. If you sometimes takes the distance away from making something to then maybe see it with fresh eyes, so to speak. You can get so involved and almost you're looking at something so heavily, especially with polishing glass. And with what I do, the surface treatment is so important, trying to get a really high quality polish, and you can get so invested in that technical side of it. Sometimes you need to step away to really then see something again. And it's the beauty of then having this exhibition space and a show like this to then finally see it displayed in that way. I find it very rewarding, especially when something comes through that potentially has been a labour of love, to say that, and yeah, can strike you in new ways that maybe you didn't potentially envisage from the outset.
I hope you'll forgive me, but my view of that is that it's all a labour of love. I mean, you know, great, we've got this gallery, we've got this wonderful team of people to help us, the gallery team, the blowers who help me make the work, in my case. Tim still is probably a lot more hands-on than I am in many ways. But honestly, we wouldn't be doing this, and we wouldn't be working with this difficult medium unless we actually loved what we were doing. And it sounds a bit sort of romantic in a way, but it's actually true. You know, I think we work with glass because we love the medium. You know, it's an exceptional medium. I used to be a potter before, and I love clay, and clay's great, and I love getting my hands in it and squishing it and doing all that sort of stuff. I was mostly a hand builder rather than a thrower, although I can throw quite well. But people ask me, do you miss it? Do you want to get back to it? But I don't really. I just love exploring this medium and finding out more about it. You know, I for years, I made work that was opaque in many ways, and in fact I still do. You can't always see through the glass that I make. You know, Tim's got slightly different parameters or slightly different objectives, but possibly as a result of Tim being here, I've learned so much more about cold working and cutting and polishing. And we've expanded our cold working area. Before he came, it was just really for finishing the bottoms of pieces so they stood up straight and that sort of thing. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Is it sometimes hard to decide when the piece is finished?
Cool.
You know, I wonder that about paintings and all sorts of things. When is the moment when it's actually right, that's it, I'm not doing anything more to it?
That's a very good question. I think painting far more has
Yes, yeah.
that element of when to stop.
But that's how fluidity of art.
I'd say you can work at a canvas and build paint for hours, days, months, years, and sort of continue with that way. With my work, because it's got very much sort of two separate facets. You've got the blown aspect, which is very immediate, glass in its molten state, and then the cold state of the glass, so cutting and polishing, which is more, I sort of more think of it like the editing suite. And then when it's hot, you're in the moment, you're bound to finish the piece, you can't just walk away, have a cup of coffee, you are there till that's done. But obviously when the glass is in its cold state, you can be a lot more sort of analytical about what you're doing. Some things might sit on a shelf for a year, you sort of really know how you want to attack it. But then once you've cut a piece off, that piece is gone. It's kind of, how much do you keep cutting it maybe, is sort of, but you can be much more considered about how you would approach something. And I think maybe that's how I sort of view myself more of a sculptor in that way, and that the things I blow predominantly, I will make what I call a blank, and then it's about how I use the cutting process to create sculpture, almost like creating a colourful canvas that I then want to create that form from. I sort of arrange the colour how I want, and it's about the cutting element to create the form. And I think there's a childlike thing of wanting to open something up, see what's inside, sort of a level of inquiry in that way. But recently this year, Peter and his wife, the director of Glassblowing, invited me to work with the team for a day a week on more blown designs. So things like the platters here behind, these fabric platters, they've come from collaborative work of working with the team here, and these are purely blown pieces and a blown finish, which has been really liberating for me to think that way and just think purely in the blown element. And allow sort of to be a bit freer. And the lovely thing working with glass, I find, is the colour application. There's so many different ways of playing glass colour. And what I was trying to achieve in these was the idea of folds in fabric. Me and my wife Sophie have been to Italy on holiday a few times in the past few years. Whenever we go to these sort of like Siena, these beautiful churches, these big Renaissance paintings where the folds and the cloaks and the fabric will always struck me. So that's what I was trying to achieve with these. But then the actual process of almost like working like pulling toffee, of being able to grab hold of molten glass colour and fold it in on itself. It's a lot of fun. Like it's a very satisfying feeling. So to make them has been really enjoyable. And it's a long process. They started more vessel forms till I realised the interior is actually more striking colour like. But through a lot of development, these are what's come, and yeah, one of the sort of more proudest bodies of work that I've done. So thank you for encouraging me to sort of maybe work in a new way. What's come out of that has been, yeah, I hope you enjoy them. I personally, yeah, find them really quite alluring.
I mean, they're incredible. Sorry.
So to get into that state, it's actually polished after you've formed it. No, it's just, it comes out just as that.
No, that's the point he's making, that normally he makes things to cut, grind and polish. Yeah. And this is a different approach. Yes, this is taking blowing. Those are those are platters that are made in much the same way, but they're more restrained in a sense. These are very, very strong, and I have to say I'm really jealous actually. You know, if the truth be told. Yeah. You know, in a way, you can see that we've had an influence on each other, partly with the use of colour. These are colours that I've used in the past, some of them, and Tim's taken that up and used it and come up with something new and exciting and strong and powerful. Yeah, really powerful pieces. I think those look quite tame by comparison, but then they have another quality, maybe they're more subtle and younger. That's what I tell myself. So, but that is a really good question to ask. I mean, knowing when to stop is very tricky. You know, you easily go that bit too far, and the piece is not quite what you wanted. You know, it turns out to be something else, but stopping at the right moment is quite critical. And especially when you've invested. I mean, normally, if you blow glass in the factory, you take more than about 5 or 10 minutes. You know, you're taking too long. And we often, where I've been working the last few days, we work for 5 hours on a single piece. But even these pieces here, these are my latest, newest pieces, they each of those takes half a day by the time we've gone through various processes in order to get the colour working the way we want it to work and get this is what we call trailing, but it's very fine trailing, getting that to work so that there's that sort of move. I was after the movement in there, you know, to create that sort of northern light effect. When I succeeded, it's another question. But like Tim was saying, it's the journey, you know, the trying, and maybe that comes back to your question too. It's, you know, the result is one thing, you hope it's going to be good. You want it to be good, you want it to be something that you're proud of, but actually the process of getting there, that's the adventure in a way. And know when to stop. It's one of those exciting moments, you know, now do I, is this it, or do I carry on and doing it? You know, there's always that danger, isn't there?
Definitely.
You're going to go too far.
I'd say especially, so Peter, when he was talking about working on a piece this week for 5 hours, it's at a studio we both use, it's called Devereux and Huston Studio in Wiltshire. And there's a piece by James Devereux in the centre table, a very tall piece with a cold chisel edge. Wonderful piece of glass. He's a very talented glass maker, so I've been going there for nearly 10 years now to make a large-scale pieces which I then cut and polish. And the piece has been going there to make cloud forms that see a little further back, which we'll go over a bit later and explain in more detail. But when you go to a studio like that and you're working with glass on that scale, and there sometimes are decisions where it's, should I twist it? Should we keep it straight? And it's such it could have been 3 hours getting to that point, and then it can be a very simple sort of alteration, but one that's then definitive for the piece. And a lot of it, say about when to stop, it's more forks in the road, I'd say. Do we go this way or that way? And it's, yeah, once it's done, it's usually done. And the investment of time up to that point, you know, you've got to, and especially if it's 34 degrees and you've been working for 5 hours,
I think it was
the decision making can get a bit blurry.
I think it was more than 34 degrees. But, and it isn't just the time invested, it's that blood and sweat that you put into it, you know. And I feel, you know, I've got glassmakers helping me, as you have, who actually are capable of handling that weight of glass and working on that scale. But you feel for them, you worry about them, you know. It's not, you know, of course you're worrying about your piece of glass as well. you know, is it going to fall off the punty, or is it, you know, is it going to make it? Is it going to look like I want it to make? But did we answer your question? I'm not sure if we did.
I just wanted to hear what you had to say. To be honest. So it's like when you start, have you got any idea what you want to make?
Yes.
Or is it a voyage of discovery and you go, oh my god, this looks good, I'll stop. Just that sort of that wonder.
So that relates to your question in a way. Do you want to say something?
Certain pieces, like the Echoes of Light, have gone through a level of development that now when I'm making one of these pieces, had quite clear defined ideas about the shape and the colours I'm going to do. It will then always look slightly different because it's handmade, it's kind of glass, but that's a much more sort of predetermined idea. Whereas, say like the colour patterns of these pieces, or indeed the platters, as Peter was saying earlier, I graduated in 2011 with a degree in ceramics and glass. Peter saw my degree show, I saw him, I convinced him to take me on, charmed him,
and then married my daughter. And gave us the most beautiful grandchildren. So I owe
That was the
it.
arrangement.
I owe it.
That was a trade-off.
Blackmail.
But yeah, so there were certain, so I started working with Peter in the cold shop, and then also did a lot of assisting in the hot shop. And through working that way here with the different artists, Louis Thompson, Lane Rowe, Bruce Marks, working together on Peter's designs, influenced all of us, but yeah, myself especially, then ended up making. So with these pieces, from working on Peter's designs, gaining an understanding of how certain colours will react with each other. And that's something that Peter's developed through years and years. So, you know, being in this atmosphere and having that education of how different colours work together, and sort of, you know, keeping notes, remembering things, working on different things, and then hopefully translating that through my own work in my own language. But being able to work in that way has certainly enabled me to, certainly inspired now a lot of what I do, particularly with these very painterly-like qualities, which is something Peter developed, yeah, over 30 years.
I suppose yes, we all start with an idea. We, generally speaking, we do anyway, and we're influenced by all kinds of things. Just because I mentioned clouds or I mentioned waves, you know, those are fairly tangible and obvious kind of solutions or resolutions to a particular thought. But the some of the ideas evolve out of the process itself. If you develop a process, you know, a technique almost, and we haven't tended to, I suppose, studio glass, which is really only 50 to 60 years old, has evolved out of centuries-old techniques. They haven't changed that much, for the most part. So working out how to do certain things. So it's been the whole history of studio glassmaking since the early 60s, and I came across it when I was teaching teaching ceramics in the USA. A guy came to the University of Iowa, which is where I was teaching at that time, and he, I think I mentioned the potter, Harvey Littleton, earlier. Well, this was one of his students from his first course at the University of Wisconsin. And he came and we built a little studio and built the annealers, built the furnace, you know, built the glassmaker's bench. And within a few days, I'd managed to burn myself so badly that I thought that's the end of it all for me. But I was hooked. Anyway, I became hooked. It took me a long time to switch from clay to glass. But the whole history of studio glassmaking has been reinventing techniques, teaching ourselves how to do things. I'm self-taught. Actually, most of the young studio glassmakers who are around now have gone to college. Anthony, in a sense, has done an apprenticeship, if you like, with us. And now he's going back to study, which is fantastically brave and just, even, you know, at my ripe old age, I wouldn't mind doing what he's doing, especially if I'd got that grant, you know. No, I'm kidding. No, it's a great thing to do, because we can be sure that he, who's a master of precision, may come out doing something slightly less precise, for argument's sake. So in my own case, I don't always want to know what the end result's going to be, you know.
Isn't it? It's fluid, so his tape will be slightly different from Tim's to yours, and that's the excitement of that medium, isn't it? It's always going to be everybody's take on that.
Absolutely, it is. You know, how you approach it, what you get out back from it. And
It's the interesting thing about this studio. You come here, see the same medium in glass, but the eclectic way that it's used is incredible. Do you have a question, sir?
That's it. Sorry, yes, go on.
You were saying about that it doesn't always come out the way you want it to come out. Does that actually matter? Because my taste when I look at something is going to be different from this lady and different from this lady, and we might think it's absolutely brilliant, and you might have decided, oh, smash it, or whatever you do with the things that don't come up to the mark.
We are continually surprised by things that we make, and it's part of the enjoyment of it. There's a series of cast pieces I do, and the design ethos is chaos. I know that I'll get sort of a platonic solid, be it a cube or something like that, but inside I want the colour to be free. I want it to, sometimes it looks like ink flowing in water, and that's the ethos of the design. Inside of the mould, casting, I have no control of how that moves, except for the fact I've set it up to move. And you open up the kiln, break open the mould, sometimes it's, oh, sometimes it's, but like you say, sometimes I might not think something's as interesting, and a different individual will be really taken with that. That's just individual design.
And just to add to that, what I've enjoyed discovering or watching happen is that when you bring a piece like that out of the mould, thing he's just described, and maybe one of my colleagues has gone to get one, a finished piece, they come out very rough and frosty, and you can't tell what's going on inside. So the cutting and the polishing, you're actually revealing what's going on inside the piece. And again, it's difficult to know when to stop. I mean, sometimes we say, shall we leave it frosted? We have talked about that on occasion, you know, because it's quite mysterious. But as you polish it more and more, you know, more elements, more detail appears. The colours are much richer, and that in itself is very exciting. But to go back to your question, sorry, or both of your questions in a sense. In my case, I'm very open to what happens, you know. So no, I don't necessarily have a fixed idea about the shape I'm going to end up with. But I know vaguely what I want.
You'll find bits on the floor that intrigue you more than what you're going to put in the kiln.
That's true. I'm a great beachcomber, and I do a lot of my beachcombing here on the studio floor. But with these forms, I knew I wanted an organic kind of form, you know. They're slightly related to the clouds, but not, you know, they're not the same. But there are some elements that may, you know, that may relate to the qualities, you know, this sort of thick and thin quality, and the way this trailing, you know, the shapes within the actual form becomes very important to me, and more and more so. You know, if it weren't so heavy, they'd be thicker still, which the clouds are, in fact. Yes, sorry, yes.
Go ahead. So what I love about Rawlinson is that you've got amazingly rounded shapes that are designed, and then you've got the gnarly stuff that's sort of designed but becomes something. But also, I remember when we did the forge stuff a while ago, that it might crack, it might not crack, but you might cut it, and all of a sudden it reveals something else. So there's a range of stuff that whether you by design or not, it suddenly reveals there's all sorts of things that just become something that's magical to people. I think it's fantastic, but also there's an element of I don't know what it's going to be because it might turn out to be that.
So the lovely Emma's brought the piece down for you to look at. Thank you. So this is, in a sense, what Tim was talking about.
Yeah, this is one of my class pieces, to get that element of the freedom of the colour. It still looks like there's movement occurring. I sort of call it static movement. So again, this idea of fluidity within. And yeah, the thing with glass, most of the time, especially with working, I think, with sort of in an abstract way, is you're letting the glass sing. There's lots of clear glass, clear on the edge, and it's just, you get that magical glow within the material. And the glass is doing the heavy lifting for you. You're wanting to sort of distract as little as possible from what it's doing itself.
The way the colour reflects on those edges.
On the interior skin. That's why I open things up a lot of times, so you can see that sort of internal reflection. I've always compared it to if you're swimming, especially in the sea, if you dive down, turn up, and you look at the surface, and the way the light hits the surface of the sea. Very often that's sort of what I see within the surface of glass. I think I like Peter's way because I think that glass and water have got quite a similar relationship, and very often sort of what I will see in water and swimming pools and boats will inform a lot of what I do. So maybe that harks to glass heaven, and it's more earth, sea and sky, I guess.
Earth, sea and sky. Well, I was standing talking, since I was last here, Tim has altered the display somewhat, which I'm really pleased about. I think he's done a great job. And I was standing looking at the waves, talking to somebody just before we started this. And I became very aware of how the turquoise, bluey green that's in the wave was being transmitted through the clear glass of the base, so that the base looked turquoise too. And of course I've noticed that before, but just standing there, talking to you actually earlier, I began to think, well, maybe I want to colour the bases next. Maybe that's the next move in that particular series. So in each series, you were asking how, where do we know what we're doing in a sense? In each series, there is room for development, and really, it's all about evolution, isn't it, really, for us?
It is very much, and the design process can often be led by seeing pieces in the gallery, seeing, that element of it, and then trying to nurture that in the next piece. I'm conscious that the online stream is about to end in the next minute or so. I'd like to thank anyone who's come online to watch. We do have the catalogue for Glass Heaven online, so if you want to sort of get any more information about the pieces, what's available and the prices, please click on the link or just contact us here at the gallery and we'll be able to give you more information. I want to thank Anthony again for filming, and I'd like to pay tribute to his father Dante, who sadly passed away earlier this year. Dante was very involved in doing a lot of our online streaming, particularly in COVID, when that was the only way we could get out and talk to people, and tragically passed away very suddenly, and he's greatly missed by all of us. I hope Anthony appreciates it.
Yeah, well said, very well said. I don't quite know whether that means that we have to stop it. I'm sure. I think
We can continue in.
we can continue here if you'd like to. Listen, we've rambled on a bit. I always ramble.